Lesley Gray, AHO. I'm one of your trainee intern conveners in 2022 and into 2023. Shortly, you will be making your choices for your preferences for which area you would prefer to have your general practice placement in. So I'd like to give you a little bit of information to think about in preparation for making those choices. So what I'm going to do is show you a little slideshow and give you a few words around the different placement options. And if any of you have any questions following this short video, please do get in touch with our program coordinator, Patricia, and have a conversation if there's anything you don't understand or you'd like further clarity on. So without further ado, here's a short slideshow for you. Now, as you'll know, currently, the trainee intern year has a number of different modules. Now, we do expect that there will be some advanced learning and medicine alignment. However, the general practice placement will continue in Wellington to be a 6-week-long placement. With the general practice module in 6th year, we don't have a start of run orientation. There are a number of reasons for that. Reason one, we know that you're very keen to get out into your clinical placement in 6th year. You've had a lot of teaching time in 5th year and only a small number of placements in 4th year. So we dedicate all of your 6 weeks to your clinical placement. Now, what's important for each of you is every single placement in general practice is different. There are no two practices that will be the same, nor will any of the computer systems be exactly alike. So it's really important that you head to your practice, and on day one and the first week, you will have orientation to that practice and that practice's system. We can't teach you this in the medical school because everybody's practice system looks and feels quite different. Now, there will be another short podcast outlining the requirements of your module, which I will invite you to look at closer to the time of your module starting. But this particular podcast is really just about what to expect and how to select your placement choices. For those of you that have a Q1 GP placement, expect to be told whereabouts you're going in early October. And then for those in quarters 2, 3, and 4, we would expect to have those notified to you by December sometime. Now, sometimes it's not possible to advise well in advance what your placement will be. Sometimes that's because we're still waiting for practices to confirm if they can take 3 or 4 or only 1 trainee intern. And sometimes the practices tell us it's too early, please contact us again closer to the time. So if you do have a late notification, there's a really good reason for that, but we will try our very best to give you as early notice as we possibly can. We have to ask the practices around about August each year, and that does take quite a bit of time to get the information from all of the practices. We contract with practices in the lower North Island, so we don't just send you anywhere. These are practices that have a training and learning contract in place with the University of Otago Wellington. A bit more about that shortly. All of your module requirements will be on MedMoodle in the 6th year. We do expect that you will get a supervisor placement feedback. At the moment, we have a consultation assessment, a bit like an OSCE, but not quite the same. And we work with simulated patients. Those can be done via Zoom, so you don't have to come back into the centre, into the campus at Wellington to do that. We also have a written assignment. Currently, this is a medications review process. We do expect that you participate in discussion board. At the moment, we have 1 forum in week 1, and that's to tell your peers in the group and your convener a little bit about your placement, the demographics of the placement, and how things are going in week 1. We do expect active participation in that forum, and in any of the Zoom tutorials or workshops that we will have during the placement and at the end of the run. And as you will all be very aware, in the trainee intern year, what is very, very important is your professional conduct. This is a terms requirement, and you are expected to treat your trainee intern placements as if you were at work. So you are expected to attend your placements. They're not optional. Like when you're a student, you may or may not turn up to a session. You're expected to turn up for work, and if for any reason you can't be there, do keep your practice manager and your GP module administrator in the loop at all times. Now, the thing that you'll be most interested in, where do we send you for your placement? Hopefully you can see my arrow here. Basically, we run all the way from the bottom of Wellington up to Wanganui, across to the middle of North Island, and then up across to the Tairafiti region, and then all of the way down through Hawke's Bay, Hastings, Palmerston North, Masterton, Wairarapa, and back to Wellington. Trainee intern placements, we try and avoid Wellington Centre. Couple of reasons. We do like you to get more of a rural experience, rural and provincial where possible, but also our fourth years occupy the Wellington placements most of the year. So it would be very unusual for you to get a Wellington-based placement. So think of the wider Wellington and wider lower north area for your placements. Now, some practices will only take one trainee intern a year. Other practices might take 4 or 5. So we can't always guarantee the same practices each and every run. We do have particular pressures in the regions, and that's not going to go away anytime soon. We only have a certain number of GP practices in the Wanganui area, Palmerston North, Hastings, and Tairafiti. So we can't guarantee you your first preference. Similarly, do expect that you will be travelling for your GP placement. Most of you will receive a trainee intern stipend grant, and that grant isn't intended for you to use towards your travel and accommodation that will be required for your general practice placement. I can't stress that enough. It will be very unusual, the exception to the rule, for you to get a placement that's right next to wherever your accommodation is. So do expect to travel. Even if, for example, you're in Hastings for the whole year, it's possible that you might be traveling as much as 50 kilometres to your practice placement. Similarly, Palmerston North, don't expect that your placement will be in central city Palmerston North. You might be as far south as Levin, for example. So do expect to be travelling. That's the main thing to bear in mind. Equally, have a think about what your interests are in your general practice placement. Yes, you'll be very focused on where, but also what type of practice are you interested in? Are you interested in larger practices or more rural practices? What about the patient demographic? Have a think about that. Please do put your reasons on your placement preference form, and we will do our very best to meet as many placement preferences as we possibly can. So just to sum up on that one, do expect that you will be travelling. Even if you are whole year based, for example, in Wanganui, you might be travelling down to Fielding for a placement. We do have a small number of practices around the Tairafiti area who don't take trainee interns all the time, but we may have one placement there that one of you can go to. We do send trainee interns to Wairoa and Gisborne and up the East Coast. There are several practices, in fact, several new practices in the Wairarapa area, but mostly our placements are in the Masterton catchment, but this changes from time to time. Only if you have a very, very strong reason would we consider an out-of-area placement, and that might be to either South Island or wider North Island. All of the medical schools are experiencing pressures on placements, and you would have to have an extremely good reason to request to go elsewhere. What might those reasons be? Very close family members who are unwell, dependents on you who live in a particular place. The list could go on. Having a cat in your flat in Wellington, that's probably not really overriding condition to expect to get a Wellington placement. So please don't give us any reasons that we're just going to have to say, sorry, we just can't support that. If you do have very good reasons to be placed out of area, please contact your module administrator in the first instance. At the moment, that is Patricia. Patricia is with us until July, and organise to have a conversation with us about that placement. Please do not contact out of area placements directly yourself. If you have an interest, contact us first and have a discussion about that. For us to apply for Auckland University catchment placements, we actually have to make a special request which goes dean to dean. So that's no light undertaking. So you would have to have very strong reasons, for example, iwi affiliation, or a very, very sick immediate relative that you needed to be close by. And give us as much notice as possible. We can never promise, but we will do our best. Similarly, South Island placements, if you have very strong reasons to request, please get in touch with us sooner rather than later. We do have to seek approval with our equivalent trainee intern conveners. So it's not a simple case of you saying, I know this practice and they've said they'll take me. Please do not contact practices yourself. If you know of any practices that are not currently taking any trainee interns, please do get in touch with us. Tell us which practices you think are interested, and we will have a conversation with the practice to ascertain, A, if they're actually interested, whether they can sign a contract with us, and whether they're suitable for the training needs for our trainee interns. Before we leave this section on placements, another word about the Tairāwhiti programme. The Tairāwhiti Interprofessional Education Programme operates in the Tairāwhiti region, including Gisborne, and as far down as Wairoa. Now, there are about 5 or 6 of these blocks a year, so not every general practice run. There are 8 runs a year currently. Not every general practice run includes a TAIPA programme. If you wish to be placed in Wairoa, Gisborne and surrounds, and it happens to be a block where there is a TAIPA placement running, you will usually have to be part of that block if you're wanting to be in the area. So, for example, if you want Gisborne for run 1, there's no TAIPA placement running in run 1, so you would have a standard placement. If you want to be in Gisborne and your GP run is run 4, and there happens to be a TAIPA programme running in run 4, it's likely that you will be part of that programme. That programme runs for 5 weeks out of the 6, and you would do slightly different things. So you wouldn't do a medications review, but you would be involved in a group community project with the local area, and that would have an interprofessional education focus. There will be a separate FAQ about that from the TAIPA director at some point. What we will also do is provide an FAQ for the GP module in 6th year, which will include some reminders about placement preferences. And in due course, I will post another podcast about the terms requirements for your module. And again, just to stress, there is no orientation going into your GP module. You will travel straight to your practice, ready to start on the Monday morning usually, and ready to orient straight to that practice. And the team in the GP module will be in touch with you electronically. So this is just a quote from Trainee Intern from 2014. You will learn heaps of dermatology in your GP placement. There's loads of skin conditions, loads of conditions that you will see that you perhaps weren't expecting, and some conditions that you will see lots of. Every practice will be many and varied, and some practices will be strong on children, some practices will have more older people, some practices will have special interest in sports medicine, and other practices will conduct skin clinics, for example. So there's lots and lots for you to learn on this run. Before we go, here is the email for the GP 6th year inbox. Please make a note of it, gp6thyuow@otago.ac.nz. Any questions relating to the upcoming placement preferences, please do get in touch sooner rather than later. So go well, and we look forward to seeing you next year.